morning, everyone. Hope everyone is well. We will be starting in a few minutes. Early morning, I'm in Sawtee, Georgia. It's another gorgeous day. For anyone who doesn't know me, you might notice I have a tracheotomy. Yeah, this is 1994, so this is my 30th year with the trach. So if you hear little squeaks and whistles while I'm talking, that's, sorry, that's part of me. Okay. Hi, everyone. Good morning, and welcome to Sacred Breeze Ministries Community Gathering, July 7th, 2024. We're live in Sawtee, Georgia, and if you're not catching this live, then I hope you pick up the video later. During this gathering, I'm going to share an insight video that will be posted later on the website. So I hope you can, and the website is sacredbreeze.org. Insights are posted at sacredbreeze.org/insights. And there's a page for community gatherings too. You can look at previous community gatherings, previous insights. So without further ado, let us begin. Greetings and welcome. The purpose of our gathering is not to create a faith nor replace any existing faiths, but rather to encourage one another to recognize and cultivate inclusive, unconditional love and creativity within each our own cultures and faiths of origin. We follow a particular order in our gatherings, and each section of our gathering is punctuated with the sounding of a gong. In case you didn't catch it, there it is. Hope I don't have audio problems today. I tested everything before. Should be okay. We will try to have one of these gatherings on the first Sunday of every month. This is our 4th gathering. And the videos of the gatherings and shared insights are made available through our website at sacredbreeze.org. So without further delay, let us begin. This is our community identity statement. Number 1, we are love-centered and inclusive. All who wish to be a part of our community are welcome. Number 2, we celebrate Divine Spirit, source of all life and consciousness. We believe that Spirit is always with us, inspiring love, healing, reconciliation, community, and creative gifts. Number 3, we celebrate the inherent sacred worth of every human being and every living creature. Number 4, we celebrate our creative gifts. We develop and share our gifts for the benefit of ourselves and others. Number 5, we are a diverse community, and we truly are a diverse community. We celebrate the diversity of humanity, life, and creation on this planet and throughout the cosmos. Number 6, we celebrate diverse faiths and traditions from which humanity draws meaning and inspiration. We lift up unconditional love and inclusivity in all faiths and traditions. Number 7, we are self-aware and resilient. We accept that as human beings we have limitations, we make mistakes, and our physical bodies will eventually die. Number 8, we are aware of the predatory and destructive forces that work within ourselves and others. Therefore, we maintain healthy boundaries for our own well-being and for the well-being of others. Number 9, we recognize that self-care is both our right and our responsibility. Our ability to develop and share creative gifts depends on maintaining our physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health. Number 10, we aspire to encounter others with patience and compassion, using our creative gifts to cultivate love, healing, and reconciliation when and where we can. Hang on. Yeah, I've got the studio software that I'm working through. Okay, we recognize the sacred spirit who unites us. Regardless of our faiths and cultural backgrounds, we recognize sacred spirit calling us to seek out and to share inclusive, unconditional love. The voice of the sacred spirit can be discerned in all faiths and traditions. We recognize and accept and share gratitude for the Spirit who abides, comforts, and inspires love, healing, and reconciliation. We open our hearts and minds to Divine Spirit who inspires development and sharing of our creative gifts. So let's take a moment to recognize and be grateful for this Divine Spirit that abides within us and with all of humanity and creation. We recognize that life has challenges we cannot control. We also recognize that lifting up and sharing the things we cannot control lightens our burdens and reminds us that we are not alone. As a community, we abide with each other just as Spirit abides with us. Let us take a moment to recognize our own challenges, be they physical, emotional, or spiritual. Lord knows I have challenges in my life, and I know everyone does. Some are personal, some are concerns for our environment, our societies we live in. Just going to take a moment to lift these up. Now, let us take a moment to recognize the challenges and the suffering that others face and endure. And I will say that I don't use names out of respect for people, but I have friends who are dealing with a broken hip and recovery from that, stroke. I lift that person up. We have family members who are grieving, we lift them up. There are groups I belong to that I lift up, and a great many people have suffered illnesses and challenges and are recovering. People in recovery, lift up especially people in recovery. As you think of the people in your life, the concerns in your own life, let us allow the suffering and challenges we recognize to increase our compassion for ourselves and for others. Now, we take a moment to recognize with gratitude the strengths and the creative gifts within our community. Let's take a moment to be grateful for our own strengths and creative gifts. And in the community, I know we have teachers, we have ministers, we have healers. These are all great gifts that we appreciate. The gifts of creativity and of sharing, and of just being present with others. It's a blessing. Now, let's take a moment to be grateful for the strengths and gifts that others share for our benefit and for the benefit of everyone. When I do this, I recognize the teachers I've had in my life, family members who have lifted me up, friends at various occupations. There's much to be grateful for. Breath. Now we're going to move to share the insight that was pre-recorded. I pre-record the insights because I have a trach and it's hard for me to talk for a long time. So the title of today's insight is Inclusive Love in an Exclusive World. And in it I discuss the challenges of living in this world today, and in developing compassion for people who have exclusivist and worldviews that are seem opposed to who we are. So, without further ado, let's play this video, shall we? Hi everyone. Welcome to the Sacred Breeze insight entitled Inclusive Love in an Exclusive World. A large percentage of the population in the U.S. and indeed in all democracy-based Western countries have have found reason to identify with exclusivist political ideologies that promote nationalist agendas. Another way to express this is that a large percentage of the population of Western democracies have taken on exclusivism as a dominant part of each their own individual identities. At Sacred Breeze ministries were centered in the spirit of inclusive and unconditional love. As such, we support not only the tolerance and acceptance of traditions, cultures, and religions worldwide, we celebrate them. Our goal is to uplift the inclusive and unconditional loving spirit that plays a part in all traditions, cultures, and religions. Now, how can a person or group committed to inclusive, unconditional love love a person or group whose very identities are centered in exclusivist ideology? The answer starts with compassion. And compassion arises from connecting with the challenges and suffering that others endure. Ask a person, any person, who they are, and you will get a variety of answers. Some will reply based on relationships. I am so-and-so's parent. I am the child of so-and-so. Some based on culture or religion. I'm a Catholic, I'm a Methodist, I'm a Hindu, I'm a Buddhist. And some will answer based on political or ideological affiliation, just to name a few possibilities. When I was a young person back in the 60s and 70s, the most likely to the answer to the question, who are you, would have been based on what a person did for a living, or what they did with the majority of their time. Where I was raised in blue-collar working neighborhoods, the answer to the question might have been toolmaker, electrician, housemaker, homemaker, carpenter, bricklayer, any variety of things based on doing. My dad was a purchasing manager for a medical supply company. My mom moved from being an X-ray technician to an inventor and homemaker. When I became a working professional myself, my identity shifted from student to engineer. As an engineer, I worked in a large manufacturing facility, supporting people who assembled and tested electronic circuit boards and equipment in the 1980s. The people who worked on the various production lines were of all races and ethnicities, all ages, many had families, and certainly some were LGBTQ. Later in the 90s, my career shifted from manufacturing to product design engineering. This insulated me somewhat from what was happening out on the factory floors and assembly lines. The good-paying jobs with benefits were going away and moving overseas. It didn't occur to me at the time, but not only livelihoods, but identities were changing as well. People who had been electronic product assemblers and testers had to find other jobs that didn't pay as well, and their doing-centered identities lost dominance. I was still a product designer, but my job shifted from working with a local factory to working with factories overseas. By the time the 2000s rolled around, I had obtained some experience and seniority. I found myself leading design teams and working with design engineers. The engineers weren't based in the US either. My peers from when I worked as a so-called line engineer had joined the people who worked on the assembly lines and lost their good-paying jobs. They also lost their doing identities. As a senior product design engineer, I was still somewhat insulated from experiencing the loss that so many others had. Somehow my career survived wave after wave of layoffs and downsizings until 2008, when I myself was downsized and when my own doing identity as an engineer was upended. As it turns out, over the course of a few decades, a great many people in the U.S. lost good-paying jobs and the doing identities that were associated with them. When I was an adolescent in the 70s, we had a neighbor who was a veteran, had a blue-collar job, had a nice house, 6 children, and a vacation home, all on one income. Wife was a homemaker. When I was an adolescent in the 70s, that was middle class. Over the course of several decades, that all disappeared. A life with a good paying job and a vacation home moved toward 2 and 3 part-time jobs, both spouses working, with no benefits. Working and doing identities have become survival identities. Self-esteem is attached to valuing oneself. In modern Western society, income and lifestyle are measures of how a person is valued. Over the course of a few decades, millions and millions of people experience not only loss of income, but loss of identity and self-esteem along with it. Now, the social goals I was raised to believe in the 60s and 70s, well, they were wonderful. We wanted to end wars. We wanted to lift up oppressed people. We wanted to liberate women, erase poverty, racism, lift everyone into the kind of post-World War middle-class lives that our neighbors enjoyed. Unfortunately, in our fervor to lift up traditionally oppressed groups, we failed to notice the huge population that was falling behind and suffering from the loss in income, self-esteem, and identity. Loss of self-esteem and sense of identity makes a person or a group of people vulnerable. And whenever and wherever there are vulnerabilities, there are persons and groups ready to take advantage. People who offer a restoration of pride and dignity. These promises are often coupled with scapegoating and blaming of others for the loss of dignity and identity. In the U.S. and in the West, we've shifted blame. We've seen it shift so many times. Black people, Jewish people, Muslims and poor people, women and LGBTQ people, both documented and undocumented immigrants, and finally, ultimately, to people who identify with inclusive liberal ideologies. Vulnerable people are told that trying to make the world a better place for everyone is the problem, and only exclusivist actions and blame of others can offer relief from suffering and challenges. There are plenty of solutions being argued regarding how to address the demise of the middle class. I believe that excluding or oppressing or somehow controlling groups of people won't restore the middle class. I believe, based on 20th century history, that completely upending society doesn't provide any answers either. Upending societies in the hopes of somehow starting over always and ultimately results in huge amounts of suffering and death. But the insight is not about offering solutions to challenges related to exclusivist identity. This insight is about compassion, specifically compassion for the millions of people who have found themselves without a productive identity, many of whom struggle to make ends meet. Compassion recognizes the suffering that feeds exclusivist movements. Compassion lifts up the positivity even in the midst of negativity. Compassion expresses gratitude and appreciation wherever possible. Compassion also recognizes the sacred nature of every human being, indeed every living creature, including oneself. That said, encounters with exclusivist identities sometimes include hurtful words and behaviors, going both ways. Compassion does not simply excuse hurtful words or behaviors. Hurtful words and behaviors are met with honesty and integrity, recalling the sacred nature of the individual behind the words and behaviors. Compassion for self and other exercises healthy boundaries and walks away from abuse rather than enduring or escalating. When negativity comes, and it does, sometimes heavily, from both directions again, it is tempting to attack back in kind. It is tempting to stereotype an individual based on politics or race or socioeconomic status. And yes, a phrase like conservative white privileged males is a stereotype that dehumanizes the individual and negates the individual's sacred nature as much as any other stereotype. Stereotyping also reinforces a person's identification with exclusionary identities, ideologies. A viable alternative to exclusivist identity recognizes the sacred nature of self in every human being. Instead of retribution and stereotyping, compassion recalls and uplifts the sacred nature of self and other, if not in words, then in attitude and actions. On a recent driving trip, we encountered an individual who was gloating over recent political events that favored the exclusivist ideology and identity. He also talked about a lifetime of running small businesses and the challenges of living under current economic conditions. Under more favorable conditions, this person may have been retired, enjoying retirement rather than selling produce from an open roadside stand in the middle of the heat of the rural southern United States. As for my reaction, I listened with interest until I became angry, and I'll admit that. I felt as if my own identity was being attacked, and I walked away. I drove away and considered my own reaction. While walking away prevented conflict or escalation, an opportunity to recognize the sacred nature of the individual and the challenges he endured was delayed at best. The opportunity to thank him for offering the service he provided, recognizing the challenges he endured, and reinforcing his sacred nature as a human being was lost as well. In the U.S. and around the world, it seems that ideological differences are the foundation of more and more separation and conflict, even within communities and families. Authentic spirit inspires healing and reconciliation. Compassion, grounded in inclusive, unconditional love, seeks peace and reconciliation. When peace and reconciliation are not immediately possible, exercising healthy boundaries helps to maintain civility and safety, while recognizing suffering and the sacred nature of others helps to humanize others and increase compassion. Recognizing the sacred nature of others also has the potential for helping others to recognize their own sacred nature. And when a person recognizes their own sacred nature, an alternative path to self-esteem and identity opens up as well, grounded in sacred nature. Maintaining compassion and civility in conflict situations isn't easy. Sometimes ego-centered defensiveness takes over, and conflict escalates anyway. When this happens, there's an opportunity to be kind to self and to others, to forgive and to learn from the experience. There's an opportunity to learn and grow as an individual and as a sacred being, worthy of unconditional love. My prayer is that we all open our hearts to authentic spirit, that we may grow in compassion and act as peacemakers and healers in these challenging times. May we all allow our inherent sacred nature as human beings to become dominant centers of our identities. And may we each embrace and uplift the inclusive, unconditional, loving aspects of our own faiths, cultures, and traditions. Amen. And thank you for listening. I hope you found that insight useful, and as I've said before, it will be posted on the website under Insights if you care, and it will be posted with text as well. So if you want to skim through the text rather than sitting through the video, you can do that. Now, this is the time in our gathering where I share a little meditation practice. You may notice this is a rather contemplative gathering. And so here we go. When we meditate, meditation is really, I think, most about acceptance, releasing distractions and accepting grace. So what we're going to do for our meditation this morning is we're going to focus on our breathing. We're going to breathe from our diaphragm, which means recognize your stomach moving up and down. Notice we have a very loud bird outside, which is a wonderful distraction that we're going to accept. As we hear the noises and things around us, we're going to accept them and return attention to our breathing. Our breathing is our focus, our home, our safe space. Wherever you are, they may be family members making noise, there may be motors kicking on and off with air conditioning or heaters or whatever. Traffic outside. One by one, we're going to recognize each and every one of those points of distraction and accept them and return attention to our breathing. Once we accept external distractions, you may notice our physical bodies having little itches and tickles here and there. Our number one rule in meditation is to be kind to ourselves, be comfortable. So we're going to, if you need to scratch, go ahead and scratch. Need to cough, that's okay. Again, the goal is not to control. The goal is to accept and release and return our attention to our breathing. Now, once we release external distractions, we're going to notice that our minds are always working. We have thoughts and feelings rising up. That's okay too. That's the way we're built, and that's okay. Our brains are always working. Rather than trying to control our thoughts and our feelings, we're going to just recognize them. One by one, recognize our thoughts, recognize our feelings. We're going to accept them as part of who we are and return our attention to our breathing. Our thoughts and feelings are like clouds drifting across the blue sky of our minds. We can recognize them, we can accept them, let them drift on by. Recognizing and accepting our own thoughts and feelings is also a tool for building mindfulness, understanding who we are and what makes us tick. Once we recognize all and accept all the distractions that are part of us, we have this sort of feeling of peace. We may start noticing things around us that we hadn't noticed before. Not distractions, but just recognizing that we're not alone in this universe. There are birds and creatures outside. There's a whole universe. When we empty ourselves, it's as if we become transparent. As if light and sound passes through us. But as it does, we recognize a sort of wonder overcomes us that we're part of all this creation. Might recognize grace touching us and filling us. For those of us experiencing pain, physical or emotional, what we're going to do is recognize the areas in our bodies where that pain occurs. And we're going to imagine our breath sweeping into those areas, cleansing, bringing healing. Even emotional pain tends to be located somewhere in our physical bodies. I know for me, when I'm feeling anxious, I feel a sort of heaviness in my chest. I've heard other people say that their ears burn, their eyes water, all kinds of possible reactions, that sinking pit in their gut. We're going to recognize those feelings as they arise, and we're going to allow our breath energy to sweep in with every inhale, bringing cleansing and healing. It's as if those areas of pain are knots, physical knots, and with every breath we're teasing apart those knots, opening up the points of tension and allowing healing grace to circulate. Distractions are still arising, and that's okay. We continue to redirect our attention, accepting and focusing on our breath as we go. And now that we're stabilized, we're going to recognize with gratitude and unconditional positive regard our own existence, our own well-being. We're going to expand our awareness to those around us, perhaps family members in the house or dwelling, neighbors near at hand. Acceptance and unconditional positive regard. Expanding our perception to the nature around us. Birds, the fish and creatures in the streams and creeks and rivers and oceans. Expanding outward, recognizing everyone and everything in our local municipality, our towns, our counties. Unconditional positive regard, expanding outward, recognizing there are people in our entire state or province, wherever we live. Allowing positive regard to flow with every breath. Accepting grace with every inhale and sharing with every exhale. Moving outward to our entire country, wherever we live. Finally, expanding our awareness and our gratitude, our unconditional positive regard toward everyone and everything in the world on this planet. And with that, we're going to return our attention to ourselves, our breathing, accepting grace and joy and healing. And when we're ready, we're going to open our eyes and finish with our meditation with gratitude and joy. Thank you for sharing that with me. I hope you find it a blessing and useful. Please share comments as you read on one of our many places. We have a Facebook group you can join and share in. We have a presence at Substack, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And in closing, how about a gong? In closing, I'm going to suggest that we abide in peace, engage in self-care, develop and share creative gifts for the benefit of self and others, to inspire love, healing, creativity, and reconciliation wherever we can, wherever possible. Namaste and blessings.